Well, thank you for coming this morning. I think a lot of you may know IAMGOLD is a gold mining company, and we operate in extremely remote regions of the world. We also operate here in Canada. And mining, as I'm sure all of you know, is a very power-intensive industry. So power for us in particular represents a fairly large cost and something strategically we're always looking at. And it's not something that we take for granted as a result of that. 2 years ago, I spoke at this conference about the need to incorporate more renewables into our energy mix. After the free fall of the oil price in the mid-2014, people would often ask us whether it made sense to move ahead with renewable energy projects. The question is understandable. We dropped from about $100 a barrel WTI down to 40. But we've always taken the view that we have to think long term. On top of that, oil prices should not be the only factor. We also have to look at enhancing our operations from a corporate social responsibility perspective. Maintaining a social license to operate is important, so installing infrastructure that will benefit the communities in which we operate is a very important factor when evaluating the returns from renewable energy projects. 2 years ago, I think some of you may remember, we built a solar power plant at our Rosebel mine in Suriname. It was the country's first renewable source of energy. Ron Hallis, I don't know if Ron is here. I know he's going to join us for dinner tonight, was our project manager. Hey, Ron. Good to see you out there. Ron deserves all the credit for getting that up and running below cost and in terms of budget and ahead of schedule. So, Ron, thank you. Been very successful. And when we're gone, the good news is it'll be left for the people of Suriname for years and years to come. So in fact, it will be our legacy. We are now planning to embark on another project, but on a larger scale. The solar project that we want to build at our Essakane mine in West Africa would be the largest hybrid solar thermal project in the country, if not the world. So Essakane, for those of you who don't know where Essakane is located, is our largest gold mine. It's accounting for nearly half of our production today, so obviously very, very important strategically for us. We built the mine in 2009 and brought it into production in 2010. Based on current reserves and resource estimates, we're looking at a mine life for Essakane continuing through 2025. And I think, just as a matter of comment, that with the rate that we're finding successful brownfield reserves in and around our infrastructure, that life of mine will extend well beyond 2025 and probably past 2030. So this is a long-term asset for us, has lots of potential. We have a concession there that's about 1,300 square kilometers. But with remote mines, generally with this land package, as I said, it's very, very suitable, in fact, ideally suitable for renewable energy projects because we have the space needed for the solar panel array. Well, there's no question, I think, as I said earlier, power is a challenge, especially in remote areas. Africa is a land deprived of electricity. This you can see from the satellite image of the world lit up at night. And a lot of these lights you see in Africa are from fires, not electricity. It's interesting when I land in Ouagadougou, which is the capital of Burkina Faso, where Essakane is located, and I travel from the airport to the hotel, I must pass somewhere in the order of 200,000 or 300,000 young people. I'm not exaggerating, because it's a population of about 2 million people, along the sides of the road with little fires burning. But there's one thing every one of them has. What do you think it is? Cell phones. I can see the cell phone lights as I go by. They're all on their cell phones. Little lesson for us in terms of where the world is going to be when we add 2 billion more people to the planet over the next 25 years, and 1 billion of them are going to be in Africa. So an interesting little side bit. With the exception of South Africa, 70% of the sub-Saharan population, or 600 million people, do not have access to grid electricity. It's absolutely alarming. Total installed grid capacity on the African continent is less than the country of Spain. So lack of access to electricity is the largest barrier to economic growth. And when you go there, which I do often, you'll see that on the youth side, there's well over 60% unemployment. Not a great formula for success, world success going forward. We think we have problems with revolutions, coups, and terrorism now. Add another 1 billion people to an area that cannot support what they have today, and the problem gets exacerbated tremendously. So when I talk about renewables, I'm not just talking about rates of return, I'm also talking about the fact that it will have a very positive and dramatic impact on society. The green dot marks the location of our Essakane mine. You can see it's in an extremely remote area of the Sahel region. Burkina Faso's national electricity grid is 330 kilometers away with no connecting transmission line. On the next slide, you'll see that we have to generate our own power, obviously. Our processing facilities with 2 production lines comprise primary and secondary crushers, a SAG and ball mills, leach tanks, all running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I know we have a lot of miners in the room. You know what that's like. Outages cause you big problems. One of the most important factors is making sure you have backup. In a single year, we process more than 12 million tons of ore powered by 57 megawatt thermal plant. The thermal plant consists of 11 generators which operate on heavy fuel oil. The oil is brought in by trucks from Benin and Togo. In a single year, more than 130 trucks drive 1,400 kilometers to deliver nearly 6 million liters of heavy fuel oil that solar could and will replace in time. This is the only processing side of the operation. On the mining side, the fleet includes 30 haul trucks, 13 drill rigs, 9 loading units, and an ancillary fleet of 25, including bulldozers and excavators. All mobile equipment is powered by diesel or light fuel oil, also trucked to the site. As we mine deeper in the pits, diesel consumption will only increase as the trucks must travel further to haul the ore to the mill. In this slide, you can see mining deeper in the pits also means a higher proportion of hard rock, which takes longer to crush and grind than soft rock. Therefore, we need more power. To accommodate an increasing proportion of hard rock, Essakane completed an expansion from 2012 to 2013. The solar plant was expanded, a new pre-crushing circuit and ore handling system were added, along with a new SAG mill, ball mill, and leach tanks. We put another $330 million in Essakane. It's an illustration of our confidence about the life of mine and the fact that this is going to be around for some time to come. In 2012, the percentage of hard rock in the ore mix was less than 10%. The graph shows that we're nearly 90% today, and no doubt we'll be at 100% next year. This is based on current mine plans, so it could change somewhat as the exploration program at Essakane succeeds. We're finding lots of satellite deposits that have softer rock and higher grade, which has helped in our cost structure. We could see that go forward, so we could see the mix change somewhat, hopefully in many respects, from around the 90-10 or 100% towards 70-30 or even 60-40 if we're successful. But as the amount of hard rock in the mill increases, so does the use of energy. Hard rock can take 3 to 4 times more power to process than soft rock. So the higher the demand for power, the higher the costs, obviously. When oil was $100 a barrel, HFO power costs accounted for 25% of Essakane's direct operating costs. Today, they account for 14%, down from 17% in 2015. You can see the dramatic improvement we've seen just with the drop in oil prices. Over the past 5 years, Essakane's power costs have been as high as 30 cents per kilowatt hour. We're paying closer to 19 today due to the lower fuel price as well as a more favorable exchange rate. Even at that, I think we're cheaper than Ontario, but I'd have to check. Although lower oil prices have allowed us to negotiate a reduction in the price we pay for HFO, the government controls the price, so the full impact is not passed on to us. They've been taxing it for a long time. They're used to the revenues. So the same way that we don't see the full impact of lower fuel prices at the pump here in Canada, we expect oil prices to increase over time. So a bit of a dynamic equation going forward. For many years, we've been considering alternative energy options for our mines so we could reduce costs. Connecting to Essakane's national grid would have required the construction of a 330-kilometer transmission line, which in 2013 we estimated would cost more than $125 million US to build. This significant capital outlay was one thing, but we would also need an uninterrupted supply of power and guaranteed price stability. In a country with severe power shortage, this option had obvious drawbacks. And I think I told the story a couple years ago, excuse me, where I was running on the treadmill in Ouagadougou. I was just new to West Africa and running quite hard, and the power went out. And as I flew over the top of the elliptical machine or the treadmill, I learned a hard lesson about how often the power goes out. It goes out quite often, and without backup and recovery, you can be in a real pick. So it's not only about building the transmission line, it's about stability and predictability. We had another option, which was supporting our fuel-based generators with solar energy. We had already built and commissioned a 5-megawatt power plant, as I say, at the Rosabelle mine in Suriname. While the project at Rosabelle was on a scale we could effectively manage internally and was built by, as I mentioned, our internal engineering and construction group, that isn't the approach we wanted to take at Essakane. We were looking at a solar project on a much larger scale, 3 times the size, in fact. The solar plant at Rosabelle cost less than $12 million to build, so we knew it would be at least 3 times that amount, given the remote location at Essakane. What we needed was a renewable energy partner experienced in building solar projects in Africa and who could put up the capital, build the plant, and sell us the power. We're not in the power business. We didn't want to be expending $30 to $40 million of capital to build it, especially given the life of mine being in that 10-year range and the price of gold, volatility, etc. So we needed to find a partner. In 2015, we completed an extensive RFP process to select a partner, and we're completing the deal as we speak and negotiating with this party as we speak. We absolutely love solar power. It's hugely affordable. You can see on this slide that 40 years ago, silicon photovoltaic cells cost $77 a watt. We wouldn't even dream of building a solar plant then, but by 2015, costs had fallen dramatically to 30 cents a watt. Because the energy produced from solar is intermittent, relying solely on renewables could result in power interruptions, cloud cover, nightfall obviously, and this is quite unmanageable given that we're a 24/7 operation. A hybrid is perfect as a solution for Essakane. We knew, though, that bringing solar into the energy mix can affect the stability of the energy supply, so it was important that we have an integrated power system that would not compromise the reliability of our power supply. Therefore, the plant size would be critical, and the feasibility study had determined that a 15-megawatt solar plant would be the optimum size for this project. Once built, the plant will employ an automated energy management system that will ensure the optimal interaction with our existing thermal power plant by providing a real-time data of the interface between the solar plant and the thermal plant. We will be able to maximize solar consumption and optimize fuel savings. Also, with the advances in battery technology and the declining costs, we would evaluate the potential for energy storage in the future. I'm not sure if you've seen what's going on north of Toronto. I'm involved with a company that's involved in batteries that now you will find homes that have solar panels on the rooftop that are connected to batteries in the home. And these batteries will allow for power availability during the evening. Not a lot of power consumption during the evening, alarm systems, refrigerators, etc. Battery technology is moving at an exponential rate in terms of improvement. And this is one thing that really attracted me, is that not only are we building a solar hybrid here, we're also putting in place advanced battery technology that I believe, just like we saw the panels improve in technology, we're going to see the batteries improve in technology. And this will be a game changer for assets located like the ones in Burkina Faso at Essakane, where there is no grid or availability. Storage, the ability to store solar power will be a game changer. So this is a very, very important part of the mix. In our vision of how this would work, our partner would be responsible for the permitting. They would build the plant, they would own it, and they would operate it. More importantly, they would finance the project, as I mentioned. No capital outlay would be required by IAMGOLD. As investments in solar are no longer as technically or financially risky as they once were, these arrangements are becoming more commonplace. Technological advancements have brought down installation and operating costs significantly, allowing for mainstream adoption at the industrial level. We would have a long-term power purchase agreement with our partner under which electricity produced by the solar plant would be sold to Essakane with the option to terminate after 9 years. In the initial year, we might pay 17 cents a kilowatt hour with a set rate of escalation in subsequent years. Over 9 years, the rate would average about 18 cents a kilowatt hour. If we were to mine Essakane beyond 15 years, the power rate could drop significantly. We'd expect that, reflecting the payback in the earlier years. So very, very attractive, at least relatively speaking, to where we were just 2 or 3 years ago. Not quite as attractive as it used to be, but again, given where we want to be in the next 5 years, and given the fact that I think oil is going to be around for much longer than people think, there's going to be a lot of volatility. It's nice to have a hedge that's in place at the site to manage those costs. The solar plant would be built adjacent to the Essakane mine. It would cover 20 hectares with the panels arranged in a 500 by 400 meter rectangle. It would be a sight to behold, believe me. On the slide, you can see the location of the Essakane pit and the existing 57 megawatt thermal plant. Directly below that, there is a sketched in rectangular area in red showing the approximate shape and size of the solar panel array. A project of this size will typically take 7 to 9 months to build. I know if Ron was over there, it'd be half that, Ron. The benefits of integrating solar power with thermal power are many. In addition to a 15 megawatt solar plant, not compromising the reliability of our power supply, solar will help reduce our power costs over time. For many years, thermal power costs at Essakane were in the 30-cent range, as I mentioned, and although they're running closer to 19 cents today with lower oil prices, this 18-cent a kilowatt hour price that we talked about for the first 9 years would be a significant reduction from what we've been paying. And obviously, lower oil prices would mean that we're going to enjoy less savings, at least in the short term. But for the reasons I spoke earlier, we would definitely want to move ahead with this project. And guess what? The energy provided by the solar would displace 6 million liters of fuel each year, which is 90 million liters over 15 years. It's a huge amount of fuel. And by not burning 90 million liters of fuel, Essakane's carbon emissions would be reduced by 255,000 tons over 15 years. It's massive. And this number doesn't include all the fuel burned just by trucking heavy fuel oil to the Essakane site. So very positive environmentally. Integrating renewables into our power infrastructure is the right thing to do from a socially responsible perspective. You know my views on this. I'm very transparent about being very supportive of moving off of hydrocarbons. And with Essakane, the largest private sector and the employer in the country, this project would add to the already significant contribution we make to the economy of Burkina Faso. So IAMGOLD is targeting to have 15% of our power generated from renewables in the next 2 to 3 years. And this doesn't include the Rosabelle power supply that we talked about earlier, and we certainly have room to expand there. We already have a solar plant at Rosabelle, and that's capable of producing for 18 more years. And now we're putting the plans in place to build another one, but this will be 3 times the size. In Mali, we're planning to move ahead with an expansion at our Sadiola mine, which means another 10 years of operation. And we're going to look at securing an uninterrupted supply of low-cost power, and obviously renewables there could potentially be part of the solution. The other thing we have to consider is that as developments in energy storage continue to advance, as I talked about on the battery side, this capability will bridge the gap. And do not estimate the power of technology. We're seeing it every day. I'm 61 years old, and I remember the Sears calculator I had that I paid $110 for. I lived on a farm in southern Ontario that I can buy today for 99 cents. And there's more power in a greeting card today, today than there was in that calculator. So things move quickly, things advance quickly. I believe that in the next few years, there is a very strong probability that all of our operations will be driven by renewables. Although mining isn't as simple potentially as a retail outlet, it has the capability of innovation. And I do believe, as I'm standing here today, that day is not far away, and we welcome it at IAMGOLD. Thank you for listening.